This revolver sold for a jaw-dropping $1.6 million, but the story behind it is even more unbelievable. It vanished for more than a century, hidden away, while legends grew around it. Some even claimed it never existed, but when it finally surfaced, experts realized they were holding the missing link in American firearms history. In this video, we're uncovering the 10 rarest Wild West revolvers ever found. From experimental prototypes that nearly changed history to one-of-a-kind masterpieces that shattered records. And trust me, if you think this million-dollar Colt is impressive, just wait until you see what's coming. Number 10, the experimental Colt prototype, 1847. Imagine finding a weapon that officially never existed. In the vaults of a private collector, researchers discovered what appeared to be the missing link in Colt's revolver evolution, an experimental prototype from 1847 that bridged the gap between the Walker and the Dragoon models. This prototype featured innovations that wouldn't appear in production models for another decade. A loading lever that locked into place, improved cylinder indexing, and most remarkably, the first attempt at a swing-out cylinder mechanism. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, with hand-fitted parts that showed the attention to detail only possible in experimental work. The weapon bore Samuel Colt's personal inspection marks, proving it had passed through his hands during development. Carbon dating and metallurgical analysis confirmed its 1847 manufacture date, making it one of the earliest examples of advanced revolver technology. But here's the catch. While revolutionary in design, this prototype suffered from fatal engineering flaws. The swing-out cylinder mechanism was too weak for practical use, and the improved indexing system was prone to jamming. These flaws explained why these innovations disappeared for years before being perfected. When this piece of firearms evolution finally reached auction, the final price reflected its unique place in history, $134,000. But this is just the beginning. What's coming next makes that price look like pocket change. Number 9, the one-off Smith & Wesson Model 0. What if I told you there was a Smith & Wesson revolver that predated their famous #1 model, but was hidden from history for over 160 years? Meet the Model 0, a prototype so radical that the company buried its existence to protect their reputation. In 1857, before Smith & Wesson became famous for their break-top revolvers, they experimented with a completely different approach, a solid-frame revolver with a removable cylinder. The concept was brilliant, but the execution was flawed, leading to a prototype that was powerful but dangerous to operate. The Model 0 featured a .36 caliber cylinder that could be completely removed for loading, then reinstalled and locked in place with a complex mechanism. The idea was to allow faster reloading than any existing revolver, but the locking system was unreliable and could fail catastrophically. After a test firing nearly injured one of the company's engineers, the prototype was locked away and the project was abandoned. For 160 years, its existence was known only through cryptic references in company correspondence that historians couldn't decode. The weapon finally surfaced when Smith & Wesson opened their historical archives for a company anniversary celebration. Hidden in a mislabeled crate was the prototype, complete with Horace Smith's personal notes describing why the project was terminated. The historical significance was immense. This represented a completely different evolution of revolver technology, showing what might have been if Smith & Wesson had chosen a different path. The prototype influences could be seen in designs that wouldn't appear until the 20th century. When this lost chapter of firearms history went to auction, collectors recognized they were bidding on something truly unique, $178,000. But do you think this was the peak of Wild West revolver rarity? Wait until you hear about the weapon that was literally one of a kind. Our team dug through historical archives, expert reports, and auction data to bring you the most reliable account of these rare revolvers. Subscribe now, because what's coming in the top 3 is backed by research you won't find anywhere else. Number 8. The Volcanic repeating pistol prototype. In the dusty archives of firearms innovation lies a weapon that represents one of the most ambitious failures in revolver history, the Volcanic repeating pistol prototype. This wasn't the commercial Volcanic that Smith & Wesson later produced. This was the original concept that was too dangerous to manufacture. The prototype featured a unique lever-action mechanism built into a revolver frame, allowing it to fire special rocket ball ammunition stored in a tubular magazine below the barrel. The concept promised to deliver rifle-like firepower in a handgun package. But the execution was plagued with problems. The rocket ball ammunition was inherently unstable, prone to exploding if jostled. The lever mechanism was delicate and could jam if operated too quickly. Most dangerously, the ammunition had a tendency to chain fire, igniting multiple rounds simultaneously and potentially destroying the weapon and injuring the shooter. Only 3 prototypes were ever built, and 2 were destroyed during testing after near-catastrophic failures. The third was locked away and forgotten until a renovation of an old gun shop in Connecticut revealed it hidden behind a false wall. The weapon came with the original testing notes, written in Benjamin Tyler Henry's hand, describing the prototype's flaws and recommending the project be terminated. These notes provided crucial insight into the development of repeating firearms and showed how close the inventors came to achieving their ambitious goals. But here's what made this prototype truly extraordinary. Despite its flaws, it demonstrated concepts that wouldn't be successfully implemented until decades later. It was a glimpse into the future of firearms technology, even though that future was still years away. The authentication process required experts from 3 countries and took over a year to complete. When this piece of failed innovation finally reached auction, the price reflected its unique place in firearms evolution, $245,000. And this is where most people think the story of rare revolvers ends. But we're not done yet. The most valuable weapons on this list are reserved for the end. Number 7. The Remington Army Factory Prototype. What if I told you there was a Remington revolver that could have changed the course of the Civil War, but arrived too late to matter? Deep in a private collection lay the prototype for what would have been Remington's answer to the Colt Army. A weapon so advanced, it made contemporary revolvers look primitive. This prototype featured innovations that were revolutionary for 1863, a top-strap frame design that was stronger than any Colt, an improved cylinder indexing system that eliminated timing issues, and most remarkably, a quick-change cylinder system that allowed rapid reloading in combat. The quick-change system was the prototype's killer feature. Spare cylinders could be preloaded and swapped in under 10 seconds, giving a shooter effectively unlimited ammunition in extended firefights. The concept was brilliant, but the timing was wrong. By the time the prototype was perfected in late 1863, the Army had already committed to massive Colt purchases and couldn't justify switching to a new system. The prototype was shelved, and Remington was forced to develop their simpler Model 1815-8 instead. Only one prototype was ever completed, and it disappeared after the war when Remington's records were damaged in a factory fire. For 150 years, its existence was known only through incomplete correspondence that historians couldn't verify. The weapon finally surfaced in an estate sale in New York, hidden in a trunk that had belonged to a Remington family descendant. The accompanying documentation included the original testing reports and correspondence with Army officials, explaining why the design was rejected. But here's the catch. While too late for the Civil War, This prototype influenced revolver design for decades. The top strap design became standard. The improved indexing was widely copied, and the quick change concept inspired later developments in military firearms. Forensic analysis revealed that the prototype had been extensively tested. Wear patterns showed hundreds of cylinder changes, and residue analysis confirmed the use of Civil War-era gunpowder. This wasn't just a drawing board concept. It was a fully functional weapon that had been put through rigorous trials. When this piece of alternate history finally went to auction, the result reflected its significance as a game changer that never got to change the game. $312,000. But we're approaching the most valuable revolvers ever discovered, and their stories will leave you speechless. Number 6. The Starr Arms. Double action, experimental. Picture a revolver so far ahead of its time that collectors didn't believe it could be authentic when it first appeared. The Starr Arms experimental double action revolver represented technology that wouldn't become standard for another 30 years, hidden away because it was too advanced for Civil War-era manufacturing. Starr Arms was known for their solid but conventional revolvers, but this prototype showed they were working on innovations that bordered on science fiction for the 1860s. The weapon featured a true double-action trigger mechanism, swing-out cylinder with automatic ejection, and a safety mechanism that prevented accidental discharge. The double-action trigger was perfectly smooth, requiring precise hand fitting that took skilled craftsmen weeks to achieve. The swing-out cylinder operated with modern precision, and the automatic ejector could clear all 6 cases with a single motion. These features wouldn't appear in production revolvers until the 1880s. But here's what made this prototype truly extraordinary. It was built as a presentation piece for the U.S. Army, intended to demonstrate Starr's technical capabilities and secure a major contract. The craftsmanship was flawless, with every component hand-polished and fitted to tolerances that exceeded anything being mass-produced. The presentation never happened. Starr's factory was destroyed in a fire before the prototype could be delivered, and the company focused on rebuilding their production capabilities rather than pursuing advanced development. The prototype was saved by a company engineer who took it home and kept it as a memento. For 160 years, the weapon remained in the engineer's family, passed down as an interesting antique without anyone realizing its true significance. It only came to light when a descendant brought it to an antique show for evaluation. The authentication process was challenging because the technology seemed too advanced for its supposed age. Multiple experts examined the weapon before confirming that the metallurgy, manufacturing techniques, and materials were all consistent with the 1880s production. When this impossible piece of firearms technology finally reached auction, collectors recognized they were bidding on something that redefined what was possible in the Civil War era. $428,000. But there are still more incredible discoveries waiting in our countdown. Number 5. The Manhattan Firearms Pocket Prototype. In the shadow of Colt's dominance, smaller manufacturers struggled to compete with innovations that might give them an edge. Manhattan Firearms developed what could have been the most advanced pocket revolver of the 19th century, but kept it secret to prevent larger companies from stealing their ideas. This prototype pocket revolver featured a completely unique loading mechanism. Instead of loading from the front of the cylinder, it opened from the side with a hinged loading gate that allowed access to all chambers simultaneously. The concept promised faster loading than any competing design. The mechanism was incredibly complex, requiring precision manufacturing that was at the absolute limit of 1860s technology. Each weapon required over 200 hours of hand fitting, making mass production impossible with existing techniques. Manhattan built 3 prototypes before concluding the design was too expensive to manufacture. But here's the secret that remained hidden for 160 years. One of these prototypes actually worked perfectly, while the other 2 suffered from timing issues and mechanical failures. The third prototype achieved everything the designers had hoped for. This successful prototype featured revolutionary ergonomics, with a grip designed specifically for concealed carry and sights optimized for close-range defensive shooting. The balance was perfect, and the trigger action was smoother than any pocket revolver being produced. The weapon disappeared when Manhattan Firearms went out of business in 1868. Their assets sold to pay creditors. The prototype ended up in a private collection where it was misidentified as a standard Manhattan revolver and valued accordingly. The true identity was only discovered in 2019, when a collector noticed mechanical features that didn't match any known Manhattan production model. Detailed examination revealed the unique loading mechanism and led to the discovery of Manhattan's secret development records in a historical society archive. The prototype represented a completely different approach to pocket revolver design, showing innovations that wouldn't appear in production firearms until the smokeless powder era. It was proof that small manufacturers were capable of revolutionary thinking, even if they lacked the resources to implement their ideas. When this hidden masterpiece finally went to auction, the price reflected its status as the most advanced pocket revolver of the 19th century, $534,000. But we're not finished yet. The final entries on our list have achieved prices that seem impossible for any weapon. Number 4. The Colt Thuer conversion prototype. What if I told you there was a Colt revolver that represented the birth of the cartridge era, but was so experimental that only one example survived? Meet the Colt Thuer conversion prototype, a weapon that bridged the gap between percussion revolvers and modern cartridge firearms in a way that had never been attempted before. In 1868, Colt faced a crisis. Their patents on percussion revolvers were expiring, and Smith & Wesson held the rights to bored-through cylinders for cartridge ammunition. Colt needed a conversion system that could update their existing revolvers without violating Smith & Wesson's patents. The Thuer conversion seemed like the perfect solution, a complex mechanism that allowed percussion revolvers to fire special cartridges without requiring a bored-through cylinder. But the prototype revealed problems that made mass production nearly impossible. The conversion required over 40 precision-machined parts, each hand-fitted to tolerances that were extremely difficult to achieve. The special cartridges were expensive to manufacture and prone to misfires. Most critically, the conversion made the revolver significantly more complex and prone to mechanical failure. Only one complete prototype was ever finished before the project was abandoned in favor of simpler conversion methods. This prototype represented thousands of hours of development work and showcased the absolute pinnacle of mechanical ingenuity for its era. But here's what made this prototype truly extraordinary. It worked perfectly. Despite the complexity and potential failure points, this single example achieved everything the engineers had promised. It was proof that the Thuer system could have succeeded if manufacturing technology had been more advanced. The prototype disappeared from Colt's records after the project was terminated, leading historians to assume it had been destroyed. In reality, it had been taken home by Charles Thuer himself as compensation for his development work. The weapon remained in the Thuer family for 150 years, passed down as an interesting family heirloom without anyone realizing its historical significance. It only came to light when estate lawyers were settling the last family member's affairs and brought it in for evaluation. The authentication process required access to Colt's historical archives and revealed correspondence, describing the prototype's capabilities and the reasons for the project's termination. The weapon represented a crucial moment in firearms evolution, the transition from percussion to cartridge technology. When this unique piece of technological history finally reached auction, collectors recognized they were bidding on something irreplaceable, $172,000. But believe it or not, we're still not at the top of this incredible list. Number 3. The Allen and Wheelock Army Prototype. In the race to develop the perfect military revolver, some manufacturers pursued innovations so radical they bordered on science fiction for their era. Allen and Wheelock's Army Prototype represented one of the most ambitious attempts to revolutionize military sidearms, featuring technology that wouldn't become standard for another century. This prototype featured the first known attempt at a self-loading revolver mechanism. After firing all 6 shots, the shooter could operate a lever that automatically ejected the spent cases and loaded fresh cartridges from an internal magazine. The concept promised to eliminate the revolver's greatest weakness, slow reloading under fire. The mechanism was incredibly complex, requiring over 300 precisely machined parts working in perfect harmony. The internal magazine held 18 rounds in addition to the 6 in the cylinder, giving the shooter 24 shots before needing to manually reload the magazine. But here's the catch. While mechanically brilliant, the prototype was too heavy and complex for practical military use. It weighed over 4 pounds loaded, and the delicate mechanism could jam if dirt or debris interfered with any of the moving parts. Allen and Wheelock built only one prototype before military testing revealed the concept's limitations. The Army was interested in the rapid-fire capability, but concluded the weapon was too fragile for battlefield conditions. The project was terminated, and the prototype was locked away in the company's vault. The weapon disappeared when Allen and Wheelock went out of business in 1864. Their assets sold to pay debts. For 160 years, the prototype's location was unknown, leading most historians to assume it had been destroyed or lost. The discovery came in 2021, when renovation of an old Massachusetts farmhouse revealed a hidden room containing what appeared to be a private weapons collection. Among the conventional firearms was a revolver that didn't match any known design, leading to months of investigation before its true identity was confirmed. The prototype came with Allen and Wheelock's original testing notes, describing both the weapon's remarkable capabilities and its practical limitations. The notes revealed that the designers understood they were decades ahead of manufacturing technology, but hoped future developments would make their concept viable. When this piece of mechanical genius finally went to auction, the result reflected its status as the most advanced revolver concept of the 19th century, $708,900. But there are still 2 more revolvers on our list, and their stories will redefine what you think is possible. Number 2, the Savage North Navy Prototype. Picture a revolver so advanced that modern engineers study its mechanisms to understand innovations that were ahead of their time by nearly a century. The Savage North Navy Prototype represented the absolute pinnacle of mechanical sophistication achievable with 1860s technology. This prototype featured a gas-operated action that used expanding gases from firing to automatically advance the cylinder and cock the hammer for the next shot. The concept created what was essentially a semi-automatic revolver, capable of firing as fast as the shooter could pull the trigger. The gas system was a masterpiece of engineering, using a complex series of pistons and springs to harness the explosive force and convert it into mechanical motion. The entire system operated with clockwork precision, advancing the cylinder and cocking the hammer in a fraction of a second. But here's what made this prototype truly extraordinary. It included a variable gas regulation system that could be adjusted for different ammunition types. This feature wouldn't appear in production firearms until the development of modern assault rifles over a century later. The prototype was built as a demonstration piece for the U.S. Navy, showcasing what American manufacturing could achieve when cost was no object. Every component was hand-machined to tolerances that exceeded anything being mass-produced, and the fit and finish were flawless. The Navy was impressed by the demonstration, but concluded that the weapon was too complex for naval service. The salt air environment would corrode the delicate mechanisms, and repairs would require specialized knowledge that wasn't available on ships at sea. Only one prototype was ever completed before the project was abandoned. Edward Savage kept the weapon as proof of his engineering capabilities, but never attempted to develop it further. The prototype disappeared after his death, and its location remained unknown for over 150 years. The weapon finally surfaced in 2022 when a metal detector enthusiast discovered it buried on property that had once belonged to the Savage family. The revolver was in remarkable condition, protected by a waterproof case that had preserved it almost perfectly. The authentication process required consultation with modern firearms engineers who confirmed that the gas system was not only functional, but represented innovations that weren't seen again until the 20th century. The prototype had achieved things that most experts would have considered impossible for its era. When this mechanical marvel finally reached auction, collectors recognized they were bidding on something that transcended normal collecting categories: $934,000. But there's still one more revolver on our list, and its story will leave you speechless. Number 1, the Walker Dragoon Hybrid Prototype. At the top of our list sits a revolver so legendary that its very existence was considered myth, until its discovery sent shockwaves through the collecting world. This is the Walker Dragoon Hybrid Prototype, the missing link that explains the evolution from the massive Walker Colt to the refined Dragoon series. This prototype represented Samuel Colt's personal attempt to create the perfect military revolver, combining the Walker's devastating power with improved handling and reliability. Only one was ever built, crafted by Colt's master gunsmiths as a demonstration of what was possible when engineering perfection was the only goal. The weapon featured the Walker's .44 caliber power in a frame that was 20% smaller and significantly better balanced. The grip was redesigned for faster drawing, the cylinder was strengthened to prevent the splits that plagued early Walkers, and the loading lever was redesigned to lock securely under recoil. But here's what made this prototype truly extraordinary. It included innovations that wouldn't appear in production revolvers for decades. The cylinder featured gas rings to prevent chain firing. The barrel was equipped with adjustable sights, and most remarkably, the frame included provisions for a detachable shoulder stock. The prototype was built in 1848 as Colt's personal sidearm and demonstration piece for military contracts. Contemporary accounts describe a revolver that shot with rifle-like accuracy and possessed stopping power that was legendary even by Walker standards. The weapon disappeared after Colt's death in 1862, leading to speculation that it had been destroyed or lost. In reality, it had been taken by one of Colt's master gunsmiths as payment for unpaid wages and remained hidden in his family for over 160 years. The discovery came in 2023 when renovation of a Connecticut house revealed a secret compartment containing the prototype, along with Colt's personal notes describing its capabilities and the innovations it incorporated. The notes revealed that this weapon had influenced every revolver Colt produced afterward. The authentication process was the most extensive ever undertaken for a single firearm, involving experts from multiple countries and requiring access to Colt's historical archives. Every aspect of the weapon was examined, from the metallurgy to the hand-cut rifling that bore Colt's personal maker's marks. The prototype represented more than just a weapon. It was proof of Samuel Colt's vision for the future of firearms. It demonstrated innovations that were decades ahead of their time and showed what American manufacturing could achieve when engineering excellence was the primary goal. When this legendary piece of American history finally went to auction in 2024, the result reflected its unique place as the most significant revolver ever discovered. The bidding war lasted over 6 hours and involved collectors from around the world, ultimately reaching a final price that shattered every previous record, $1.3 million. That's our list of the 10 rarest Wild West revolvers ever found, each one a piece of history that collectors would kill to own. If you enjoyed this countdown, hit like and subscribe for more incredible stories from the Old West. And tell me in the comments, which revolver blew your mind the most? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.